In Chapter 6, we look at process costing. Process costing is when we make thousands of products over a series of processes. So unlike job costing, which we can trace costs to individual jobs, individual products, or individual customers, in process costing, we spread the cost across processes. When we're using those processes, we calculate equivalent units of production. When we're looking at equivalent units of production, there are two different methods for creating equivalent units of production. One is the weighted average method, and the other is the FIFO method. What this spreadsheet shows you is the weighted average and the FIFO method side by side. The main difference between the weighted average and the FIFO method is that the weighted average combines those beginning units to be finished in with the units of production, where the FIFO method only looks at the work that was done during the period. So it separates those beginning work in process units and costs out separately. So we can see here when we're looking at percentage of completion. So we have the weighted average here in the middle and the FIFO method here. So we can see that the FIFO method looks at what was left to complete on these first 5,000 work in process, where the weighted average has combined them together with the units that were finished. We get different equivalent units of production for FIFO. So there are less equivalent units of production under FIFO than we would under weighted average. Weighted average also combines the beginning work in process costs with our current costs when we're figuring out what our cost per equivalent unit is, where the FIFO only looks at the cost in the current unit. So you can see these current costs here. We have 229,800 and 376 for conversion. In the weighted average, we've added the beginning work in process and reduced it. And in the FIFO, we only use the current costs. So then we assign our costs to our equivalent units. The weighted average method, we transferred out these 17,000 units to finished goods. Then we had ending work in process of 300 units. In the FIFO, we keep the prior period costs separate from the current costs. So we have the prior period costs that were added in up here with the weighted average. We keep those separate. Then we add in the cost that it was to finish our products, and then we have our ending 3,000 units. You'll see that we still have the same exact manufacturing costs under both units, but how they get applied to the products is slightly different. So here we have $15.32 for direct materials and $23.50 for conversion, and we have a total per unit cost for the period of $38.82. We're under weighted average. We have $16.19 for direct materials, $27.52 for conversion, and $43.71 for weighted average. As we apply the same exact costs, weighted average is far more popular with process costing as long as our costs stay relatively stagnant throughout the year. If we have high fluctuations in our costs for direct materials and even conversion, so we have cycles or we get busy in the summer or things cost more in the summer, then we're actually better off using FIFO because it gives us a better idea of how those costs change from year to year instead of smoothing them out as the weighted average does. In this example, we want to look at transferring from one department to another. We're going to use the weighted average equivalent units. So we have a lot of information about this company and Department A and Department B. And we want to calculate first the equivalent units for Department A, and then the equivalent units for Department B. So we're going to start with Department A. We have beginning work in process of 500 units in Department A. It tells us here that we started 2,000 units into production and completed 2,100 units. So we can bring that down here and look at this. We had 500 at the beginning of the month. We started 2,000 into production. That gives us a total of 2,500 to account for. We transferred out 2,100. It gave us that information. Since we need to account for 2,500, our ending work in process is the number we need to account for minus that 2,100 in beginning units. So our ending work in process has 400 in it. So when we look at this, it tells us that we were 100% complete for direct materials, but 30% complete for conversion. And our ending work in process in Department A was 50% complete for conversion and 100% complete for materials. So then we have that we were 30% complete for conversion, and we were 100% complete on these and 50% complete on these. So when we're looking to have our equivalent units with the weighted average, the finished and transferred out are always the same all the way across. Those are the ones we did 100% of the work on. Our ending work in process, those 400, were 100% complete for direct materials. And we know that because it tells us that direct materials are added at the beginning of the process in Department A. So if we've done any percentage of conversion at all, we are 100% for direct materials. So we are 50% for conversion. So we would take that 400 times 50% and have 200 for conversion. We have 2,500 equivalent units for direct materials and 2,300 for conversion. Now we look at our unit cost determination. We're using the weighted average, so we combine the beginning work in process with our current costs. So we have a lot of information up here. So our beginning work in process, we had 2,750 in direct materials and 1,494 in conversion. Then we added costs during the month. We added 18,000 in direct materials and 21,000 in conversion. So we want to bring that down here. We want to add these together to get our total cost for direct materials and conversion. Then we divide by our equivalent units. So we have 2,500 equivalent units for direct materials and 2,300 for conversion. So we take our cost, 20,750, divided by the 2,500 units. We want to make sure we extend that out. And we generally want to extend it out 4 decimal points because those cents really add up in costs when we're talking about thousands of units. Take the 22,494 divided by 2,300. So we have equivalent units for direct materials and equivalent units for conversion. We add them together to get our total equivalent unit per unit. Now we want to do cost assignment. So we have units transferred out and our ending inventory that we want to assign those costs to. Our units transferred out are 2,100 units. We transferred those to Department B. So we would take those 2,100 units times our per unit equivalent unit costs. Then for our ending work in process, we have a direct materials cost of $8.30. We have 400 ending work in process for direct materials. So we would take that 400 times the $8.30. And then for conversion, we have 200 left in conversion and $9.78. We would take 200 times $9.78, and that gives us our conversion costs. Then sum up each of these columns. And we applied $43,244 in costs, which should match our total cost for the period we have up here. Now we're going to look at Department B. So we have beginning work in process, units started or transferred in, total units to account for. It's a lot of the same information. The main difference in Department B is now we have units that have been transferred in from Department A. So we need to look at B and find the information for B. So for B, we had 300 work in process that were 40% complete. We completed 2,000, and then our ending work in process is 70% complete. We also need to know that direct materials are added when the process is 50% complete in Department B, which means that until conversion is 50% complete, we haven't added any direct materials. So we start with these 300 units in B that are 40% complete. We've transferred in from Department A 2,100 units, giving us the total units to account for of 2,400. It tells us that we completed 2,000 and transferred those to finished goods. So if we have to account for 2,400 units and we have 2,000 units that we transferred out, that means we have 400s left in our ending work in process. These 2,000 were 100% complete. Our total to account for 2,400 units. We are 100% complete for what was transferred in. Our ending work in process is 100% complete for direct materials, and we were 70% complete in conversion. So we have these 2,000 units that were 100% complete. Now we have our 400 units that were ending work in process. We're 100% complete for transferred in. we're 100% complete for direct materials, and we're 70% complete for conversion. So we would take 400 times 70% and get 280 units. We then add those together. And we have 2,400 units for transferred in, 2,400 for direct materials, and 2,280 for conversion. Next, we apply our costs. So we have our cost information up here. We added during the month for direct materials 37,920 to Department B. We added conversion costs of 24,434. We had some costs in our beginning work in material, which it says the beginning work in process inventory was 6,100, of which 4,200 was transferred in costs. So we have 4,200 of transferred in and 6,100 total, it tells us. So we know we didn't add any direct materials. So what we have then is conversion costs that were the difference between that 4,200 and the 6,100 total. Then our current costs. We transferred in $37,968 from Department A. Then we added $37,920 to direct materials and $24,434 to conversion. We sum each one of these up, and it gives us our total cost for the cost categories. Then we divide by our equivalent units. We have 2,400 for transferred in, 2,400 for direct materials, 2,280 for conversion. So we divide costs by the equivalent units. And we add those together to get our total per unit of production for the month. So we have our units completed and transferred out were 2,000 units. We transferred and completed out 2,000 units. So we would take that 2,000 units times our cost per unit of $44.92. Now we have our ending work in process. So our ending work in process, we have 400 and transferred in times $17.57 for transferred in costs. For direct materials, we have 400 in direct materials times $15.80 for direct materials. And for conversion, we have 280 times $11.55 for conversion. Remember, our costs should match. So our total costs accounted for, $106,422, should match what our total costs were in the above part.